Farland Chang reports that the bleak job outlook is making graduation a bittersweet moment.
On college campuses all across the country, graduates are celebrating. But while there is joy on the surface, there is anxiety below.
I'm unemployed, and I'm facing perhaps dire straits in the future.
Graduates from the class of '92 face one of the toughest job markets in many years. Often they must compete against more experienced workers at a time when businesses are slow in hiring. These two Ivy League students are still job searching, even after paying $18,000 a year at the University of Pennsylvania.
I placed all my hopes into one job and it didn't work out, so that was a big bad mistake.
We're competing with people who are 25, 26 for the same position, and they've had experience before because there have been so many layoffs.
Graduates are being advised to leave the comfort of home and go where the jobs are.
North Dakota, South Dakota, they're looking for teachers, and many people just do not want to go to that region of the country.
But the Delaware Valley does have some bright spots. The Philadelphia College of Textiles and Sciences claims it will place more than 85% of its 500 graduates.
It's not a huge school, so you get a lot of personal attention.
The key is that many students specialize with a clear goal from the start.
The textile industry has been hiring from Philadelphia Textiles for a long time, and those ties have really helped me.
But for most graduates at this time, finding a job is the exception, while searching for one is the rule.
You just want to get that first job opportunity. Begin to develop a track record for yourselves.
One final tip, interview with as many firms as possible now, in hopes they remember you later. In University City, Farland Chang, the 10 o'clock news.
One other political note tonight, this one on the environment and administration.
Game time.
Live from Veterans Stadium, the Phillies wrap up their three-game series against the Cincinnati Reds following Phillies preview Sunday afternoon at 1 on Fox 29.
And now, the Delaware Valley's only primetime newscast. Fox 29's The 10 O'Clock News.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jacqueline Bolden. Here's what's happening. On a holiday weekend traditionally filled with family gatherings, the political debate continues over family values. Another Republican spoke out to defend Vice President Dan Quayle, whose attack on the TV character Murphy Brown set the debate in motion last week. Here's Joel Darkety.
President Bush went fishing off Kennebunkport, leaving behind the shockwaves of the week's political battle over family values.
I'm talking about values, I'm talking about family, I'm talking about integrity.
Despite being ridiculed, Dan Quayle insists the theme is working, and a campaign official calls the strategy a total winner for us, a view echoed by Housing Secretary Jack Kemp.
Quayle's speech, which controversial as it may be to the left, clearly struck a responsive chord in the hearts and minds of most of the American people in the center and to the center right.
As the Bush-Quayle campaign sees it, the family values issue cuts across all economic levels, appealing to the inner city as well as to white suburbs. It's also viewed as an issue so broad, almost any other issue can be read into it. Welfare, health care, AIDS, abortion, and race. But critics say it allows a candidate to strike a responsive chord on those issues without the dangers of a direct attack. And there are risks beyond Murphy Brown. Even some Republicans say the president and Quayle might be criticized for talk and no action.
Not just cash it in, not just use the term, but be serious about it.
Some Republican critics say that by trying to shore up his base conservative voters, Bush risks alienating crucial swing voters.
All right, here we go.
Family values with its overtones of morality is a complex and potentially risky issue. But so far, despite the criticism, the Bush campaign must feel the benefits outweigh the risks. Jill Doherty, Kennebunkport, Maine.
Bill Clinton was the center of attention at a flag-waving welcome home parade through the streets of Little Rock. The probable Democratic presidential nominee publicly thanked his wife and daughter for sticking in there with him and, quote, giving the American people a real example of family values under fire. He asked voters to remember him on Tuesday, primary day, in Arkansas. Police in San Bernardino, California have arrested 2 men found with stolen military weapons. One of the men is a former security guard at Fort Irwin Army Base. CBS News reports that Los Angeles gang investigators believe that the 2 men were planning to trade the weapons to LA gangs for drugs. The Army says there's no evidence to support that claim. U.S. Secretary of State James Baker signed a nuclear arms agreement today with 4 of the former Soviet republics. Baker and the foreign ministers of Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Belarus met in Lisbon. They signed an accord binding the former republics to the terms of nuclear arms reductions, which were agreed to by the Soviet Union before it dissolved last December. Baker also met with the European community, which agreed to give more than $76 million in aid for refugees in the former Yugoslav Federation. The ministers are also considering sanctions on Serbia as a way to force Serbia out of the civil war in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Serbian gunmen have released more than 6,000 refugees who were caught trying to flee the fighting in Bosnia. The mostly Muslim refugees were held for 3 days before being allowed to continue to the Croatian port of Split. Ethnic fighting in the former Yugoslav republics has killed more than 2,000 people and left 1 million others homeless. Danish radio is reporting that Thailand's prime minister is preparing to flee his country for refuge in Copenhagen. Suchinda Krapayun has been under public pressure to resign. At least 40 people were killed and 600 injured during a week of clashes between the Thai military and anti-government demonstrators. Thai officials have not yet confirmed the prime minister's resignation. If your holiday weekend menu includes fresh tuna fish, we have a health warning for you. The New Jersey Health Department is warning consumers to avoid fresh tuna from Ecuador. At least 7 people have been diagnosed with food poisoning after eating the fish. The warning again, only for fresh tuna from Ecuador. Canned tuna is not affected. It is safe to eat. Picnics and holiday meals are just the beginning of this Memorial Day weekend, the unofficial start of the summer. Afternoon temperatures in the mid-90s made today feel more like the dog days of summer. Beaches were packed, and although the ocean is still a little cool for most casual bathers, the shore was the place to be in New Jersey. In Philadelphia, the place to be was at Penn's Landing for the annual Jambalaya Jam. Farland Chang reports.
Dr. John and friends started the jamming with the music of their New Orleans roots. They come from the birthplace of blues and the cradle of jazz, and they turned Penn's Landing into one big party.
I say this is music to shake your T-9 by. I would say this is music to dance, have a good time. This ain't music to just listen at. This is music you can participate in.
For most people, this is the annual kickoff to summer. But for a few, this is a reminder of a simpler way of life. Charlie Rivers grew up poor in New Orleans. He came today because this music always picked him up.
We didn't have nothing, man. A lot of people used to put cardboards in their shoes and things. And they hear dance, they hear music. You see them dance, they forget all about what they had.
But it's not only about music. It's also about food.
No more chicken boys for 20 minutes.
These are chicken poor boys, along with the red beans and rice, and of course the gumbo. They show how Cajun food has become a favorite after starting out as food for the poor.
Red beans and rice was a big thing there. You know, you get a nickel of red beans, 2 cents of rice. You might be able to get a piece of meat to put in it. If not, you eat it like that.
It's a way of life that 50,000 people are expected to sample before the 3-day show ends. Until then, if you can't make it to New Orleans, call this the next best place to be. At Penn's Landing, Farland Chang, the 10 o'clock news.
Coming up, Johnny Carson says his final goodnight as a television era ends. A report about the dangers of rabid raccoons following an incident involving a baby girl. But first, this week's segment of Philadelphia's Most Wanted.
Coming up, outsider Ross Perot hires 2 high-powered insiders to run his presidential campaign. We'll tell you about a bank heist, police chase, and shootout all in one in Glenside.
Low temperatures put the freeze on migrant workers looking for a paycheck on South Jersey farms. And dentists are going to greater lengths than ever to protect themselves against AIDS. The 10 o'clock news is next.
And now, the Delaware Valley's only primetime news hour. Fox 29's The 10 O'Clock News.
Good evening, I'm Jill Chernikoff.
And I'm Lee McCarthy. Here's what's happening. Ross Perot's improbable run for the White House gained momentum yesterday with strong showings and exit polls during the primaries in Ohio and California. And today, it got a strong injection of credibility when two old pros were named to co-manage Perot's campaign.
Explained yesterday's showing this way.
It shows the creativity and the initiative of the American people, which most people in Washington feel is non-existent. They feel that you have to tell people what to do.
Then Perot headquarters dropped a bombshell this afternoon, naming former Reagan campaign manager Ed Rollins and former Carter Chief of Staff Hamilton Jordan to run the Perot campaign.
I think the possibilities of a Perot presidency are more exciting and promising to me personally than the certainty of what either a Bush or Clinton presidency would mean to this country.
The most critical thing that we all feel is that we need leadership. We need to break this impasse that's going on in Washington today, and we need someone to get this economy moving.
Ross Perot has lots of money, but both men denied they had been bought. And because he will be spending his own money and not federal campaign funds, Perot says he'll spend $100 million on the campaign. Bush and Clinton will be limited to spending $50 million each. Perot was asked if he is trying to buy the office.
Realistically, it's very simple. I told the American people if they put me on the ballot, that I would finance my own campaign, that I would not belong to anybody but them, and I would go to Washington as their servant. So in just plain Texas talk, I am buying it for them because they can't afford it. It's so expensive. The way it's set up now, you either have to take all this money from special interests, and then they own the country, or the way we're running it, when it's done, it'll belong to the people.
Yesterday, voters let Bill Clinton lock up the presidential nomination for the Democrats. On the heels of his victory today, Clinton continued his attack of Ross Perot and the Texas billionaire's approach to the candidacy. The issue, Perot's hiring of Hamilton Jordan and Ed Rollins.
Ross Perot has been a very effective professional political operative over the last 20 years. That is not the image he's trying to give off. And I think that this will at least confirm that. Not that he has bipartisan support, but that he's buying good political help.
Clinton must now contend with exit poll figures from yesterday's primary showing overwhelming support for Perot. Perot's brushed off those results, saying it isn't over till it's over. Perot is expected to announce his candidacy late this month or early July. White House officials say they've considered the presidential race a three-man battle for quite some time now. Charles Bierbauer reports Perot's new staff could make inroads into both the Bush and Clinton candidacies.
President Bush's supporters say Ross Perot's new campaign co-managers could be a point of vulnerability. Perot had said he wouldn't be manipulated by Washington handlers, but now he's hired two of the best and most expensive in the business.
Perot is going to have skilled handlers now. Two guys who are very capable political tacticians and strategists.
But there is at least a political rift in the Rollins family.
I've been very happily married for 5 years up till the last week.
Sherry Rollins, a high-level assistant to President Bush, is leaving the White House, but not to join Perot. Her resignation letter to the president says, "I firmly believe your re-election is crucial for the future of the nation." Though Rollins signed on for the 1980 Reagan Revolution, he has been in and out of favor with the Bush camp. Perot continues to steal attention away from both the Republican and Democratic candidates. White House spokesman Marlin Fitzwater says the president has felt for some time that he's in an unpredictable three-way race, and that troubles Bush campaign officials more than running against Bill Clinton or Ross Perot singly. As California ended the primary season, the president started right in on winning California votes in November.
When that convention of ours is over, I'm coming out of there with my sleeves rolled up, ready to take this fight to every precinct in this country. And we're going to win it. Believe me, we are going to win it.
The Bush campaign argues that Perot's candidacy does more damage to Clinton, and if the race should narrow to only two candidates, it will be the president against one or the other of his challengers. Charles Bierbauer, CNN, the White House.
Women continue to make their mark this primary season, and last night was no exception. Congresswoman Barbara Boxer is one of two women to win Democratic primaries for Senate seats in California. The other is former San Francisco Mayor Dianne Feinstein. Both Feinstein and Boxer made the lack of women in the Senate a campaign issue. Right now, there are just two female members of the Senate, but that number could swell. Women have secured Senate nominations in several states, including Pennsylvania.
The FBI and Cheltenham police continued to search for the man who held up a bank in Glenside this morning. Bank employees arriving just before 9 o'clock were met by a lone gunman. He forced the employees into a vault and then made off with one bag of money. Police spotted the suspect several blocks away at Cheltenham Avenue near Vernon Avenue. An officer gave chase, and the suspect crashed his car.
The suspect exited his car and fired one shot at the officer. At the time that the shot was fired, the officer was starting to exit his own vehicle, and he sort of slid and fell to the ground outside the car with the door's protection.
The suspect fired 2 more shots. The officer returned fire. No one was hurt. The suspect left the money behind and fled on foot.
The trial for the murder of David Riley is slated to start tomorrow. Riley was killed last summer trying to stop a late-night brawl, apparently fueled by alcohol and racial tension. As Farland Chang reports, his Southwest Philadelphia community has made progress in healing its wounds, but some tension still exists.
On one part of McCreesh Playground, these white teenagers played together. A few blocks away, Vietnamese immigrant boys play cards among themselves. They say they only play at McCreesh if they are in a large group, or else they feel scared.
They call us chinks and gooks and stuff like that.
Sometimes they want to cause fight, so I don't want to fight them, so I just walk by.
This is the racial tension that still exists, almost 1 year after David Riley was hacked to death with a meat cleaver. He was killed on the sidewalk, trying to make peace between young whites and Asians, whose brawl was fueled by alcohol and racial slurs. Riley's friends want the killers punished.
Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's the way I feel about it.
While friends of David Riley want justice, friends of the 7 men accused of murder want a fair trial.
Placing this death penalty on them, it seems like to them that these people don't matter at all.
Asian Americans United do not want a repeat of what happened to Tai Trong. He spent almost 2 months in jail after he was wrongly accused and perhaps stereotyped.
A horde of Asian gangs, that's the saying goes, just going around hacking people to death. That's what they make it seem like.
While the trial will be closely watched by both sides, community leaders have been trying to promote peace. These 2 parents, along with David Riley's parents, have organized trash cleanups and games. They are ways to build bridges and to discourage young people from drinking and fighting.
Kids need to have some direction, they need to have role models, and they need to have guidance.
White kids, they come to me and say they don't want no trouble. So could you send that word to the Asian kid?
We have fun.
Their goal is to see the kind of friendship shared by Nan Nguyen and Jennifer Ryder.
I like her because she shares stuff with me, and she let me go to her birthday party.
What comes easy for them is coming harder for others. But no matter how the trial turns out, Jennifer and Nan say there is no reason they cannot stay friends. In Southwest Philadelphia, Farland Chang, the 10 o'clock news.
Coming up, a new study showing AIDS is out of control throughout the world.
This season, call the Innovation Arts box office for tickets to The Virgin Molly at the Wilma Theater.
Thursday night, don't miss Malcolm Jamal Warner, comic Bill Mayer, and the soulful Dave Collins on Arsenio. Where else?
Tonight at 11:30 on Fox 29. And now, the Delaware Valley's only primetime news hour. Fox 29's The 10 o'clock news.
Good evening, I'm Lee McCarthy.
And I'm Jill Chernikoff. Here's what's happening. A federal judge has ordered the state of New Jersey to come up with a new system to pay for health care for those who can't pay for themselves. Today's ruling challenges the surcharges that the state places on hospital bills to pay for the uninsured. Jacqueline Bolden reports from Trenton.
New Jersey lawmakers usually go home for the summer. But today, a federal judge said perhaps lawmakers should stay put and deal with the state's health care crisis. State Senator Dick LaRosa showed me a hospital bill from a Mercer County patient, which he says proves there's a problem.
The total cost of all of these procedures for a 2-day stay is $1,376. Down here, it says the price per case, and it says the DRG amount due is $6,532.
The DRG, Diagnostic-Related Group, is an arm of the State Department of Health. It is allowed under state law to tack on a 19% surcharge to 40% of all hospital patients, a surcharge to pay for the medical care of the uninsured. But labor unions challenged the law in court, saying union money, which was used to pay the medical costs of its members, could not be used to subsidize the health care of others.
The people of this state know that there are problems. Every time they get a hospital bill that is double or triple the services that they received, they know that there's something wrong.
The critical cost of health care is not unique to New Jersey. It is a national crisis. Paying the medical bills of the uninsured is a problem facing legislators in every state and in Washington. The ruling of federal Judge Arthur Wolin in Newark today orders New Jersey to come up with a more equitable solution, and he's given the governor and the legislature 1 more week to show him they're making progress. Florio said he and legislative leaders met today and will meet again Monday to determine how to tackle the problem.
We want to make sure that we are all together in trying to set up a process to deal with the problem. I mean, not talking procedures, not talking about process. We know that the substantive issue of a good health care program has to be addressed as a result of this decision.
The judge has already ruled that the state's hospital funding system is not working and will not be allowed to continue. Florio and state lawmakers have been ordered to act. The health care of the state's 7.5 million people is at stake. In Trenton, Jacqueline Bolden, the 10 o'clock news.
A central New Jersey woman has received a new heart. That is pretty common these days. What is new is that for the first time in this region, the recipient was kept alive by an artificial heart for 3 weeks until a suitable donor could be found. Dr. Brian McDonough has the story.
25-year-old Candace White has only been out of surgery a few hours. Last night, she received word she was getting a new heart. Her mother recalls receiving word from Candace.
She said, "Ma, doctor says I have a choice, the prime rib or a heart." I said, "Well, what'd you pick?" She said, "The heart, but they can put the prime rib aside."
Candace was different from any other transplant patient who ever come to Philadelphia.
Conventional tactics to support the failing heart really were not working in her. So we needed something with more effectiveness.
Dr. Adonisio put her on a ventricular assist device 3 weeks ago, and he was on his way to making medical history in the region.
If she didn't have the device, she would have died. She was in cardiogenic shock when we were consulted for her, and she was moved promptly to the operating room, and the device was instituted, and we restored cardiac function.
Last night, she returned to the operating room for a new heart. These pictures were taken during the procedure.
The device actually works quite simply. Blood comes into the device. It is then sent through this little area, and at a certain point, when enough pressure builds, it is sent out the rest of the body.
Today, Candace White is alive thanks to the device which bought her time.
They gave her life. They gave her they gave her a second chance.
In North Philadelphia, Dr. Brian McDonough, the 10 o'clock news.
For the first time, the White House is acknowledging that Texas billionaire Ross Perot could pose a threat to the Bush presidential campaign. Today, it tried to counterattack with a White House news conference.
Skip Loescher joins us now live with a report. Skip?
Lee and Jill, neither the Bush nor the Clinton campaign seems to know how to thwart Perot's popularity, and Ross Perot loves it.
The Perot phenomenon continues to confound the political establishment. The unorthodox, unannounced candidate has thus far captivated a dissatisfied public clamoring for change. And Perot promises he won't beat around the bush.
Just really fascinating, isn't it, that suddenly we got the President of the United States interested in a balanced budget. You know, he plays a good saxophone. I need to get the message to him about, a good musician can make a lot more than the president, so I'm not sure if he's got his priorities right.
This appearance in Las Vegas was one of the few times Perot has ventured off TV talk shows to meet supporters face to face. Yet his popularity in the polls has soared.
What's the strategy, Ross Perot?
Apparently, the strategy is for the president to try to ignore Perot, while spokesman Marlon Fitzwater harpoons Perot's claim that he's a consensus builder. Fitzwater claims Perot's